Welcome back to Nocturnia. There are appetites that go beyond simple hunger, cravings that cannot be satisfied by any means. They are the hungers of the soul. Tonight, we speak of a man named Silas, who possessed such an appetite. Peas did not feast on food, but on sorrow. He was a grief eater, and he would soon learn that every meal comes with a price, and that some ghosts, once consumed, refuse to be It began, as these things often do, with an accident born from family tragedy. His aunt had just died, and his cousin, hollowed out by her loss, pressed her mother's wedding ring into his palm. "I can't look at it anymore," she'd said. "Just take it away." Silas slipped it into his pocket. On the drive home, a strange, euphoric warmth spread through his gut. Later, his cousin called, thanking him. She'd finally slept. "It's like a weight has been lifted," she'd said. He didn't make the full connection until 2 weeks later when, by accident, he licked some stray icing off the ring. The moment the metal touched his tongue, it dissolved like sponge sugar, releasing a powerful, addictive rush. In that moment of intense pleasure, he understood. He hadn't just taken an object. He had consumed the grief attached to it. Over the next 5 years, he turned this strange ability into a discreet, word-of-mouth business. The desperate always found him. The process was simple. Bring him an object saturated with your pain. He would consume it, and your grief would vanish. What he never told his clients, the fine print on their Faustian bargain, was that the grief never truly disappeared. It lived on inside him. He had consumed the emotional trauma of 78 dead loved ones, and in each had left an echo behind a whisper, an itch, a memory that wasn't his. He called them the chorus. Plage. His entire life, Silas had been haunted by a single, recurring nightmare. Being trapped inside his own body, conscious but unable to move or speak, while something else controlled him from within. He would wake up screaming, a prisoner momentarily freed from the terror of being a passenger in his own flesh. He never connected this deep-seated fear to his new profession. He never saw the warning signs until it was far, far too late. A woman brought him her brother's baseball cap. Suicide, as Silas consumed it, chasing the familiar warmth. A man's voice echoed in his mind, clear as day. Finally, and then, his hands were no longer his own. He willed them to move, but they remained placid on the desk, foreign objects at the end of his own arms. His lifelong nightmare was unfolding in real time. "You've been so selfish," the brother's voice said inside his head, "keeping us all in here." The claustrophobia of being caged inside his own skull was worse than any physical pain, like being buried alive but forced to watch the world through a window. "It's our turn." Now, another voice joined in. The chorus was learning how to drive. They took his body out for a test drive, and he was conscious for every terrible moment. He was a passenger, watching through his own eyes as they used his voice to argue over who got control next. Were dividing him up like a timeshare property. That night, they drove his body to the sister's house. Tuus knew where she lived, because her brother knew. When she answered the door, her face contorted from confusion to terror. "Tommy," she whispered. "Hey, sis," his mouth replied in her brother's voice. "I'm back." She shook her head, backing away. "No, you're that person. What are you doing?" "It's complicated," his mouth said. "But I needed to see you to tell you it wasn't your fault." A silent scream echoed in the prison of Silas's mind. "Don't listen to him." But she couldn't hear him. The chorus used intimate memories only her brother could know to manipulate her into handing over more grief-soaked items, feeding their collective strength. This horrifying pattern repeated over the next few days. With each new object he was forced to consume, the chorus grew stronger, and his own consciousness shrank, compressed into a smaller and smaller corner of his mind. The nightmare was no longer a dream. It was his entire existence. The only time they let him surface was to inform him of their plans. "We're going to the cemetery tomorrow," the voice of his aunt explained one night. "Fresh grief is the sweetest." In that moment of utter hopelessness, he realized they were right. He couldn't drive the car anymore, but he could still crash it. He reached deep inside himself, to a place he had walled off for decades so well, of his own grief. The pain he had been running from his entire life. He found the memory of his father's overdose, his mother's suicide, the friend who died in his apartment. He pulled all of it up like poison from the well, and before the chorus realized what he was doing, he turned it on them. His own sorrow, pure and unprocessed, flooded the mental space they occupied. They were echoes, entities made of the pain of others. They had never known grief at its source. They screamed as his authentic anguish engulfed them. The chorus splintered. Paul, for the first time in days, he moved his hand when he wanted to. He dragged himself to the mirror. His face was gaunt, his eyes bloodshot, but they were his eyes again. "This isn't over," hissed one of the remaining voices. "No," Silas said aloud, his voice hoarse, but his "You won't." He took out his grandfather's pocket knife, the one grief object he'd never consumed. He put it in his mouth. It dissolved, but this time he focused not on the pain of his grandfather's death, but on the love, the pride, the joy of the memories they shared. And he understood his mistake. Grief is not just pain. It is all the love that is suddenly left with nowhere to go. By consuming only the pain, he had created these hungry, incomplete ghosts. This realization, a burst of love and sorrow, combined, finally silenced the chorus. In the days that followed, Silas purged his life. He returned the objects to the families, offering apologies instead of miracles. With each act of restitution, the remaining whispers in his head grew fainter. He stopped eating grief. Instead, he began listening to the stories behind it, guiding people through their pain instead of consuming it. He learned that true healing wasn't about removing the sorrow, but about understanding the love it represented, and finally beginning, after all these years, to digest his own